Hey guys, Marsingen here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so earlier today, TURLES details were revealed on Twitter. I did do a video talking about it and, you know, my initial reaction to his kit. And, you know, we've had a few hours to stew now. I mean, by the time this video goes up, the information came out. It's going to be, what, like close to 11 hours ago, something like that. And I have seen, as always, when a new unit's details come out, a pretty wild range of responses across the Dokkan community. So I thought we'd do some community reaction things here. Now, one thing I do want to stress, and I know a lot of you guys in the audience, or my audience, know this, like I say this all the time. I don't think we should judge units too harshly on paper, because whilst you can do calcs for their stats and stuff like that, like, it definitely feels different when you see units actually performing in the game. Like, seeing the numbers of what a unit can do on paper is one thing, but then when you actually use them in an event, especially because, remember, when you're actually playing the game, like, there's a lot of RNG involved, right? So, like, even a good unit can look bad if you get bad RNG with, like, their additionals and stuff like that. And then a unit that's maybe not as good, you could get, like, a godly RNG turn, and then they look really good. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's an effective way to, like, rate how good they are, but one of the things I've been saying to a lot of people today when engaging with some of these criticisms about TURLES is, this is a gacha game, so there is a whole separate argument to be had about, you know, how you should be careful about which units you summon for, especially if you're free to play or someone who doesn't spend very much. But at the end of the day, it is a game, and games are supposed to be played to have fun. So for me, if a unit comes out and it seems like they will be fun to use, they don't have to be like, you know, the new top, you know, best TUR. They don't even really have to be like top 3, top 5. If they're a unit that I can run on a team and have a load of fun, then, you know, to me that can be a cool unit, right? Doesn't mean they're the best unit, but they could be fun to use. And TURLES definitely seems like he could be fun to use. I made this tweet that kind of sums up how I feel about it. I do think TURLES is good. I just don't think he's great. I think he's a top 10 TUR. Now, obviously, you guys know I don't like to rate units that I haven't used. So for me, my top 10 list is obviously only global, so it looks very different. But looking at the top 10 lists that people like Truth, Minato, some of my other friends who aren't creators have posted or showed me, I would still say I would put TURLES in the top 10. And a lot of them agree, right? I think Truth even said in his breakdown video that without seeing gameplay, he thinks TURLES is probably like 8 in the top 10 Dokkan Fest TURs. So the thing is, he's good, but he's not great. And so I said, not only do villains need something more than this, but as a community, we need something that generates more excitement. I do believe this, right? Because while a unit can be fun to use, even if they're not the best, the times when the community seems to have the most fun and is the most united is when a unit comes out and they are absolutely insane. Like, even though he, of course, released alongside Gohan, who's probably one of the most controversial units that we've seen in a while. Like, remember how crazy hyped everybody was for Orange Piccolo because of just how ridiculously good he is, right? Same with Bulma. Like, units who are really good, people love it when those units come out, and everybody has a lot of fun, right? And you don't have to kind of scrape and claw all these arguments about how the unit could be useful in certain situations. When a unit is just flat out really good, everybody enjoys it, right? And it's not only good for the game, but good for the community. And villains really needed some buffs, right? And I say here, not every new unit needs to be the best. I kind of said this at the beginning, but I do feel like when a new TUR comes out, and I should have specified in this tweet, I mean category. So when like a new TUR comes out, I'm not saying that they should automatically be like a top 5 unit in the game, but they should at least be able to have arguments made for them to be like a top 5 TUR if they are a TUR. And same with like if they're an LR, you should be able to argue that they're a top 5 LR. Not every unit needs to be that good, but I feel like that's how we get a more sort of positive community, because I do think people complain a lot. And, you know, it's one of those things, you always see this in online communities. The negativity kind of rises to the top. Those are the kind of tweets and stuff that get amplified the most. But I think there is a lot of fun that could be had with this TURLES. I wanted to show this tweet from my boy Enerjack that worked out some of his calcs. And this is running him with his support unit, you know, his banner units. And then I think a unit in slot 3 that activates big bad bosses. And the thing with this TURLES is he is a damage dealing unit. The bottom of the image is slightly cut off, but you can just see the numbers at the bottom that are important. When he's fully built up, he is doing what? 11.7 million, and then when he gets an additional, obviously he infinitely stacks attacks, so technically these numbers are just going to keep getting higher and higher, but after 6 supers, which is enough to fully max out his passive, he's doing a 12 million super attack. Then his next additional would be, well, it's 11.7. The next one would be 12.1. When he's fully built up, he can super 4 times in a turn, so these numbers are just going to keep going up, and all of those are super effective. And then when you use his active skill, if you've already got 6 stacks, that means he's already super effective against all types. His active skill does 13 million damage, or 13 million attack stat technically, and then he's going to drop a bunch of like 12 million attack stats after that. So he is going to do a ton of damage. He is clearly a damage dealing unit, and I think most people's main issue with him is that he's not as defensively strong as they would like. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the comments here. So major letdown, I think he flat out sucks. I had a bit of back and forth with this guy because I think flat out sucks is being way too over the top. He does say here, being a bit too harsh, he doesn't suck, but I wouldn't summon for him giving his terrible design. Because yeah, he has a bunch of unneeded restrictions that make the card not fun to use. Like, why his support is locked to a Goku family enemy or a unit that has the name Kid Gohan, I really don't understand why they didn't make it, especially because his active skill, I know it's not part, well, it's in his intro as well, I guess, he's looking at Gohan on that monitor, but why didn't they make it so that the unit can include Kid Gohan in the name on your team as well? I don't think there's a lot of units that come under his leader skill that would actually fit that, but at least that would make it a little bit easier to activate, because obviously at the moment there's no really relevant events in the game where you fight a Goku family enemy, and his active skill makes a huge difference, because if you're running double TURLES leads, his intro animation even, they both get their intro animation, which means your entire team for the fight, if they're all extreme, is getting 6 key and 36% attack. So like, that is really, really powerful. It doesn't really help out TURLES himself when people's main complaint is that his defense isn't so good, but that is a huge buff for the team. So it's not looking like he'll be able to survive any of the harder content in the game. So that was the other thing I actually wanted to show that Enerjack worked out here with the Celts. It's a bit higher up, I think. Yeah, so this is from the Sin Shenron fight. You can see here, these are the totals. So with and without support. So if he's got his support unit in slot 1, I don't know if this is with Big Bad Bosses as well, he's taking 566k from Sin Shenron. With no support on the rotation, he's taking 648. Now, a lot of these 200% teams, especially if we're throwing in LRs, like LR Cooler, stuff like that, you're potentially going to have 700k HP. So whilst, you know, I would never call this number like good tanking, but he's not getting one-shot by these super attacks. And then one of the other things you have to remember is that when he supers, we've already talked about how he can super 4 times in one turn. Every time he super attacks, he heals you 6%. So if you're on a 700k HP team, that's like 50k HP that you heal every time he supers. So if he's getting supered in slot 1 and taking 560k, then he supers 4 times, heals you back 200. You're at about half HP. And then obviously, depending how strong the rest of your rotation is, as long as everybody else can tank the normal attacks, then obviously you are surviving that turn. So again, I think TURLES is going to be a unit that's really fun to use. I do think he is a prime example that when the data download happens and the private server showcases come out, people are going to see clips of him like against Sin, against Broly, against Metal Cooler Core, like using his active skill and then doing like, you know, 3 or 4 super attacks and just melting off like, you know, half or even more of the boss's total HP. And then you'll kind of see like, oh, okay, you know, his defense isn't so great, but like he does some crazy damage. And I know a lot of people say like, you know, villains didn't necessarily just need another unit that just does a ton of damage. And I do agree with that, but that doesn't mean that he is necessarily bad just because he's not what the villain like category needed. Like I think he is still going to be a lot of fun. So Holden says great offense and defense. I know he is a guy that does a lot of counts as well, so he will have obviously seen these counts about how much damage TURLES will be taking. He may not get defense raise on super attack, but the defense raise per super in his passive is multiplicative, will be live at the start of the turn. With support and built up, he can be in slot 1, and then he heals per super. Yeah, exactly, this is what I was saying. So he can be decent defensively, he's just not going to be a defensive god, right? He is not a defensive unit, he is an offensive unit, essentially. So shout out to my boy AC, he'll probably slot into the open slot on my top 10 list. Yeah, this is what I've seen a lot of people saying, is that they consider him to be around about Yamcha tier. Obviously, I haven't really used Kale personally, so I don't know if I would if I would argue that he's better than her or not. I kind of really need to wait until I've used both the units. Apart from the fact that he doesn't give support, and obviously doesn't have a nullification, I can kind of see him being similar to Gamma 2. You know, and Gamma 2 and Gamma 1 were, you know, units that were being argued as like the best TURs in the game when they came out. So it's just the fact that these top 5 are so dominant, and I think that's the biggest problem that we have in the like community, is these top units really are like super good. So when a new unit comes out and doesn't like replace one of the top 5, then obviously people sort of complain. But you guys know, if you've seen my videos, whether we're talking about heroes or whether we're talking about anything else, one of my biggest pet peeves in the community is the way people misuse the word mid. I think Truth mentioned it in his heroes video or in his community reaction thing that he did recently for like community hot takes, where mid is supposed to mean middle of the pack. So it should be the tier between good and bad. So I've seen people saying legitimately today that if a unit isn't top 5, they're mid. And it's like, that actually like blows my brain out of my skull. Like, how many TURs are there in the game? And if you're not top 5, you're mid? Like, huh? Do words have meanings anymore? I don't know. Confusing. But so Annie, I don't want to go in on my boy Annie, because we do love Annie, but this is probably one of the worst takes that I think I've seen about TURLES. When it comes to what I was saying before about, you know, how this is as a game, units don't have to be the best, but they can still be fun, is saying he has no place in the game and is a worthless release. I mean, is he? Like, his team's pretty good, he's going to be doing tons of damage, like, I'm sure his team will be fun. Like, if you want to call that a worthless release, then I feel like that is very, very subjective, right? I don't know, if a unit comes out and they're fun to use, even if they're not the best unit in the game, I don't see how they are a worthless release with no place in the game. I don't know, that just seems crazy to me. Like, his leader skill is cool, but we didn't need an Extreme Pure Saiyan's lead. That is kind of true. Extreme units needed him to be good and Super 17, but they failed on all fronts. Honestly, really disappointing they fumbled this hard. I disagree that, like, I do think he's not great, but saying he's like a insane fumble, I'm not too sure. Again, I feel like we really do need to see him in game before we go this hard on the unit, but I guess we'll see. Very generic hard hitter, and he's not even the best at it. Again, I kind of had this conversation with Minato earlier as well, but like after I posted this thread. There's not many other characters in the game, even when we look at those top 10 TUR lists, that are doing like 13 million super effective against all types, like super attacks in one turn. So when it comes to being a damage dealer, he is good at that. But I do agree that he is not really what villains needed. Like, that is definitely true. I think he's the perfect unit to let me save for worldwide. Yeah, I've seen some people say that. But for real, I like his leader skill. Kid Goku, Int, Broly, and Bardock are on his 200%, which is cool. Too bad some Frieza and Cooler units aren't on Space Traveling Warriors. Yeah, Golden Frieza not being on Space Traveling Warriors is just a crime, because this TURLES definitely needs really strong slot 1 units to go with him until he gets built up, and then he can kind of handle slot 1. That Amond and the Bullsack guy are a good slot 1. The other side banner unit seems kind of bad. Shout out to Thad. I mentioned them yesterday because big TURLES fan. Been waiting on this release. Very, very disappointed. Now, I do think they've taken this news quite harshly, because obviously they wanted TURLES to be like the new best unit in the game. I definitely don't think that TURLES is as bad as some people are making out, but This is a very good point from Proton though. Mostly disappointed because we don't get TURLES cards every month like Goku. He's not bad, but considering how rare of a release he is, he should have been better. And this is very true. It's exactly the same point that we said about Raditz, and it's exactly the same point that applies to Super 17. We're not going to get another TURLES card now for ages. And whilst this guy might be pretty decent and fun to use now, like the next time we get a spike in difficulty, it is very possible or very likely that he gets aged out defensively. Now, I mean, he's going to be tanking normal attacks, so he does very much fit into that category of units that I've talked about a lot in the past, that the community seems to have a real hatred for. Units like Physical Super Saiyan 3 Goku, who at one time was considered like the best unit in the game, and then it's like the unit can do tons of damage, which is their role, that's their class essentially. Like if this was an RPG, they are there to be a damage dealer, but then because they die to the hardest hitting bosses in the game super attack, then all of a sudden people don't like them. And it's like, not every unit, like if every unit in the game tanked Sin Shenron's super attack, what would be the point of playing the game? It would just be easy. You just play the game on auto at that point, right? So some units in the game, to kind of have some kind of balance, you want to have units in the game that hit really hard but are not as good defensively, and it kind of makes it a bit more fun. One of the things I mentioned in one of my conversations earlier was it's kind of like the crazy builds that people make in Souls games, where you can give yourself a ton of buffs, put yourself down to like 1 HP, gives you loads of attack buffs, and by doing that you see clips of people going in and like one-shotting bosses, but if they take even a single hit they will die. So it's not exactly a good strategy, but it's like a fun thing to do. It's like very risk-reward, and it's very satisfying when you pull it off. So that's why for me, like, I am a fan of units that do big damage, even if, you know, sometimes you get unlucky and they're the one that takes a super and it means you die. It's just kind of like, oh well, I guess I have to try again. And that does suck when we're talking about Red Zone and events that have limited tries, 100%. But if you think about like the Sin Shenron event, that doesn't have limited tries. So if you go in, you get all the way to the very end, and then on the last turn, TURLES eats a super attack and you die. Kind of sucks, but just load it up and try it again. Like, yeah, I don't know. So, honestly, just wish he was AGL TURLES, but on immense crack. I mean, that would have been cool, right? Because TURLES, AGL TURLES, unconditional support. I think the problem is that's what everybody wanted him to be. We wanted him to be this super top tier unconditional support unit, and because he isn't, I think people are immediately disappointed because he doesn't do that. But it's kind of one of those things, like other TURLES units have been support units, but that doesn't mean there's like a unwritten rule in the game that every TURLES has to be a support unit. So while I do understand people being disappointed that he isn't, it's kind of not something that, like, you know, you can be disappointed about it, but it's not like they had to make him, like they never promised us in advance he was going to be a support unit. But Dokkan University at Twitter has taught me that if a unit is not able to tank the 2 million damage super attack of the hardest boss in the game, they are garbage. Exactly. This is exactly the point that I was talking about earlier. Like, the hardest bosses in the game, the hardest hitting bosses in the game, are supposed to kill you when in certain situations. And like I said, if every single unit on your team just eats their super for breakfast, then you can't lose. Which, I mean, cool if you just want to win, but like, is the game that fun at that point if you're just going in with an auto-win team? I mean, for some people it probably is, right? But I don't know. To me, that's not where I draw the most fun from. So I wish he raised defense on super. I mean, he would be cracked if he did that, right? Especially because he can super 4 times in 1 turn. So imagine if he was infinitely stacking attack and then had raised his defense for 1 turn. Then, yeah, that on top of the damage reduction that he has and everything, he would actually be crazy. I'm glad they gave him attack stacking with the active. That is true as well, right? The more supers you get off with him and delay using his active skill will hit like a truck, which is pretty cool. And then, yeah, he has that banner unit that can go slot 1, which is cool. Definitely a top 10 TUR. Like his animation, dislike his kit. Villains didn't need another character that does damage. I mean, again, I don't disagree, right? But this is kind of my main point, is villains didn't need another damage dealer, but just because we got another damage dealer doesn't necessarily make him bad, is kind of where I'm coming from, right? I think he's top 10. The restrictions are really annoying, especially since there aren't any hard Goku family stages. Yep, true. With him not raising defense, but I'd still say he's top 10. Looking like he can take supers well from some of the hardest fights in the game, so that's good. Yeah, exactly, with those calcs. The other thing as well, and Dokkan has fumbled this quite a bit recently with like the Kale and Super 17 releases. If the Part 2 LR for this celebration is a unit that goes on Turles' team, or even like the Easy A for Team Turles if they get their Easy A. If that unit, the Part 2 LR or the Easy A for Team Turles is giving like a massive amount of extra support or even like damage reduction support, then this Turles like instantly becomes better. So hopefully they will do that and not do like a Kale and then release like a completely unrelated Part 2 LR. Because that will definitely help him out. We still need to see the celebration info to see what the Easy A is going to be. Because, you know, LR Turles getting an Easy A. Great Ape Turles. Imagine they give Great Ape Turles an Easy A and they make him like, you know, God Goku level. Tech God Goku. Maybe not as in he's an ultimate tank, but like Tech God Goku level in the sense that he's almost like an auto run on your team in like most events, right? Imagine they make Great Ape Turles a support unit, gives damage reduction with orbs collected like Kid Goku or something like that. Then he also has the Great Ape mode, which although his is RNG, can obviously help you from cancelling out super attacks. Like this Turles needs a little bit of extra help in the defensive department, and I think he could be really good. So I guess we have to see the rest of the celebration. Definitely has unwanted restriction in his kit, but I do think he'll have a place in the game eventually. Just not right now. As someone who loves running villain teams, he'll be used as a just for fun unit. Exactly, right? Which is, you know, not what we wanted, but still kind of cool to have. Definitely is a top 10 TUR. People are underestimating him. He's actually pretty good offensively. I think he's very good offensively, and even defensively. He could be better, but he's still great. Everyone likes characters with big numbers. I'm expecting a switch up from some people after the showcases drop. Yes, I absolutely think that this is the case. People will see clips of him doing crazy damage with his active skill and then doing like 4 super attacks and just absolutely melting like Broly or the Metal Cooler Core or something. And I think a few people will definitely switch up on him. So his support being restricted really hurts him. This is just absolutely true. He's lucky extreme units come out so slowly because his spot on teams are the most released and changed up. I mean, true, so few extreme units come out that if this Turles makes it onto, like say you summon for him just on a whim and you pull him, you can run him on your like movie bosses team or your, you know, Pure Saiyans, even though he's not going to necessarily have the best links in some of these setups. You can run him on a team and he'll be pretty fun because extreme teams don't get updated that often. Like Planetary Destruction, Space Traveling Warriors, right? Like he'll have a place on some teams for a while because extreme units just don't get replaced as quickly, which is true. Almond and Diaz are the true pride. Well, I think it's actually Almond and the Bullsack guy, whose name I always forget. Daze is the other one. It's like Daze and the robot guy are the other one. But yeah, they are basically like Raccoon and Guldo, but they don't have to be run with Turles. So they are really, really good. Overall, just disappointed. This could have been Ginyu 2023, especially with 2 banner units, big fumble. I mean, yeah, he's definitely not, like, just from seeing him on paper, he's not as impactful as when Ginyu released. But I also feel like he's not as restricted as Ginyu, because Ginyu, you really did need to run, like, the other Ginyu Force units, whereas Turles, you don't really so much. Unit with unnecessary restrictions all over the place. Defensively exposed with RNG factor, considering his build-up is with super attacks and not just attacks. I mean, again, we've already talked about how his defense can actually be pretty good. No defense on FSA that would somewhat help him with that one issue. I mean, obviously, defense on super attack would be massive. Should have been Kid Goku for the villains. Again, this is just the like expectation that the community has placed like for itself that Turles should have been a really good support unit. Which, I mean, yeah, it would have been awesome if he was, but just because he isn't what we wanted him to be doesn't necessarily mean he's bad. Is kind of the point that I am trying to get at. He's the biggest disappointment this year. Is he? I guess Raditz was last year. Resurrection of F Blues were last year. Super 17 was this year. I feel like Super 17 is a bigger disappointment than this Turles. And I'm saying that as a Super 17 fan, so I don't know, maybe I am biased because he is very disappointing to me. But surely people think that Turles is better than the Super 17, right? I mean, I think I've seen that mostly, right, for today, but more hyped with his banner unit, the Ballsack guy, because they are 3 out of 7 links with Piccolo Jr. and goated slot 1 for villains. Yeah, they are a very good slot support unit just for the extreme teams in general. Annoying unit that should have been better. If we had a big fight that mattered with a Goku family boss, he'd be more fun to run, but even so, his lack of defensive abilities will age him out sooner rather than later. Yeah, see, again, I mentioned this already, and this is the kind of point that I can agree with, right? Like, his defense, he can actually be decent defensively now, but he will age out faster than units that have things like guard, higher values of damage reduction. It's the people that are saying that he's bad defensively now, which I don't think is quite... He's not quite as bad as some people are making out. I think TURLES is currently not that great unless the Team TURLES easy A's, but if that happens or we get another good TURLES to link better with him, he'd feel a lot better. I mean, the side banner units give him his important links except for big bad bosses, so we do need like really good slot 3 big bad bosses units for him. So Team TURLES easy Aing would obviously be fantastic. His restrictions hold him back a bit, but I think he's definitely in contention for top 10 TUR. Very disappointed. Villains get buff. Villains getting buffs is good, but not like this. Not a just good enough type of unit. Hate the intro restriction. It could have at least created a fun team. I mean, he can create a fun team. It just kind of sucks that, yeah, his support is restricted. In terms of ranking, I do still think he's a top 10 Dokkan Fest TUR. Yeah, excluding easy A's. And this is what I said right at the beginning with that other tweet that I showed. Like, the fact that he's good, but he's, like, just good is just not really... like, enough, right? So I think if you pull the Almond and Raisin banner unit alongside TURLES, he will look solid. Yep. I think he's better than Bardock and Yamcha, but a little worse than Gamma 2. Yeah, as what I was saying earlier, right? I could see arguments for being him on the same tier as Gamma 2 on like his best turn, but how often are we going to see that? I guess we have to wait and see. I think he needs the Goku family stage to really make him good. But the Goku family stage has to be primarily hard so that TURLES can blow up. Yeah, if we suddenly get... this is... I made a separate tweet, which I should have brought up, about how Dokkan needs to stop bringing out units that will potentially be good in the future, but are not good now, right? So, like, if they bring out a Goku family red zone, then this TURLES would suddenly be super useful. But, like, why would you release the unit first... and then in like a month's time, really, and even Goresh said, like, imagine his banner goes away and then we get the Goku family red zone. Like, that would just be really dumb, right? So, his intro isn't good enough and works only versus Goku family. His defense is too weak and too long to build up. I mean, again, I think his defense is okay. He does take a while to build up. His intro is good. It's a shame his intro doesn't give defense, but obviously it's so restricted, you're not going to see it that much anyway. He has the same name as the AGL. He needs an easy A. See, this is where I think people start wilding out a little bit. Like, the unit's not even in the game yet, and people are saying he needs an easy A. It's like, dude, he's not that bad. Come on. He feels kind of equal to Super 17 and Raditz. No. I mean, Super 17 is better than Raditz, so even putting them two together, I think, is unfair. But saying that he's kind of equal to Raditz, like, no, bruh, no. They need to start making extreme units better overall. The last few we have had aren't good enough, so I rarely run extreme teams, which sucks. If he had defense on super and 30 or 40% damage reduction instead of the 20, he's loads better, plus the gimmick for his intro is poor. I mean, if he had raised defense for 1 turn on super and had 30% damage reduction, he would probably be like a top 5 TUR, right? Because he's getting multiple supers per turn, which we've already seen he can get up to a pretty decent amount of defense. Then he's rocking 30% damage reduction with a bunch of extra stacks on top of that. Like, he would actually be crazy. He has the second worst restrictive mechanic, his intro in the game with LR Gohan's transformation. Yeah, fair. Yeah, his restriction for his intro just sucks, right? There are just no events worth running in the game at the moment where you can actually get his intro, which just really sucks. So, I don't like his restrictions. He doesn't seem that great. I hope he's better in practice than on paper. I think he will be. Especially disappointing because Piccolo Jr. and Tech World Tournament Goku were the TURs right before him. This is very, very true, right? The fact that the last 2 TURs that came out are in contention as like the 2 best TURs in the game. It obviously feels disappointing that then the next one that releases after them is kind of like barely in the top 10, which I think is unfortunate. If his intro wasn't trash, he'd be really fun. With 2 of them, he wouldn't even need key, true. I'm sure he'll be better when we see him in game. Yeah, exactly. Top 10 TUR for sure, yeah. He already seems underrated considering he's a better Gamma 2. Interesting. I think, like I said, I think I could see them on the same level on Turles' best turn, but I don't know if I would say he is Gamma 2 level. Physical Turles feels like an LR kit put on a TUR. He's good, but Turles seems like he needs the extra LR stats. Damage reduction is helpful, but he'll probably end up being a 3rd slot floater once he's built up his super attacking passive. Support hinting to new Goku event. I mean, this is the problem, like the other tweet that I said. We keep getting these units come out, like, say, for example, the Boo duo from the 8th anniversary, and it's like, oh, they brought these guys out, they stack defense, we're going to get a new hard, super long, like, event soon, and then we still haven't got one. So, he'll probably be on the same level as STR Super 17, give or take. Probably won't be tanking any supers. Well, we've already seen that he kind of can do that, but his damage at least should be really good. Yeah, it should definitely be good. We've gone on for quite long now. I'm going to cut it off there. I only made this tweet like 2 hours ago when I was, getting ready to start leaving work, and I think people are still replying now, but I don't want the video to go on for too long. So if your comment didn't make it into the video, or you just didn't see the tweet, do let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on Turles. Obviously, like I said, it's all well and good for people to have initial opinions on him based on his kit and the calcs, but like, let's see him in game before we really start like dogpiling on him, right? Because I think people will see the crazy damage that he puts out and maybe change their minds a little bit, but I guess we'll have to see. So let me know your thoughts on the Dokkan Fest Turles down below in the comment section. If you're on JP, are you going to summon for him? Are you waiting to see him in game, which probably is the better idea, to be fair? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.